Hello and welcome to the Eerie Nerd Podcast, the podcast where I talk to you about all things geek. I'm your host Kieran, and in this episode I'm going to be talking about the first episode of the brand new series The Last of Us, which aired on Sunday the 15th of January in 2023 for US audiences and the 16th of January for the UK audiences. Way back in 2013, PlayStation 3 owners were given a fantastic third-person survival horror game by the creators of Uncharted and Crash Bandicoot. A game which would change survival horror in a way which would define the genre and create one of the greatest games ever made. Written by Naughty Dog's director Neil Druckmann, The Last of Us was about a fungal infection which wiped out humanity, turning victims into bloodthirsty infected. Players controlled a man called Joel Miller, a smuggler in an apocalyptic Boston, who was tasked with smuggling a young girl out of the city called Ellie, who'd been bitten by one of the infected, but survived and turned out to be immune to the virus. He was due to take her to a group of freedom fighters called the Fireflies, who would use Ellie to create a cure to the virus. What followed was a story of heartache, betrayal, and love, and some of the best acting in any video game thanks to the incredible voice talents of Ashley Johnson as Ellie and Travis Baker as Joel. In 2020, in the height of a global pandemic, we got part 2 of the story of The Last of Us, which followed Ellie as she tried to survive in a world that was ravaged by the infected, and she was out for revenge over the death of someone very close to her. Although 8 years in the making, The Last of Us Part 2 was voted the best game ever made. Following the success of The Last of Us Part 2, Naughty Dog started work on remaking Part 1, using the same engines used for Part 2 with the same graphical upgrades, and in 2022 we got The Last of Us Part 1 remake. To almost coincide with the release of the remake Part 1, HBO announced that they were working closely with Naughty Dog to bring The Last of Us TV shows to our screen. Written by Naughty Dog's Neil Druckmann and Craig Mazin, known for creating the HBO series Chernobyl, The Last of Us TV show tells the story of The Last of Us Part 1, where we followed Joel Miller, played by Pedro Pascal of The Mandalorian and Narcos fame, a single father working hard to provide for his daughter Sarah, who's played by Nico Parker of the remake of Dumbo on Disney+. As he's working with his brother Tommy, played by Gabriel Luma from the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., things around them start to take a weird turn, and they're thrust into the beginnings of an apocalyptic event. I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who's not seen the show yet, but what I will say that it follows the events of The Last of Us Part 1 almost scene for scene, and it does it brilliantly. At one point in episode 1, which is called When You're Lost in the Darkness, Joel, Tommy and Sarah are driving in a car trying to escape the city of Austin, and it's shot for shot exactly as the game, and it is perfectly done. Later in the episode, we meet Ellie, played by Bella Ramsey of Game of Thrones fame, the girl Joel is tasked with smuggling out of Boston to meet up with the Fireflies, and what conspires is an incredible series of events that brings us a sensational opening to what promises to be one of the best video game adaptations ever made. Pedro Pascal brings to life Joel Miller in a way which is very much different from Travis Baker, but not enough to be totally different, but enough to give him his own take on the character, and there's just something about it that just works, and you forget that you're watching a TV show and not playing the game. On the same side of the coin, Bella Ramsey is a perfect casting for Ellie, being able to bring the sass of Ellie while still being able to portray her as a child, which Ellie is at the point in the story. While my love for the series means I will always love Travis Baker and Ashley Johnson as Joel and Ellie respectively, it is amazing to see two incredible actors portraying characters we've grown to love and feel for in a way which just makes them feel real and alive rather than just a good cosplay. And that is something both Pedro and Bella, as well as the hosts of the ensemble cast, have been able to do, bring the story to life. Speaking of the story, that is something that Neil Druckmann has touched on. He is adamant that he didn't want the story to just be the story of the game, but to add some things into the TV show which weren't in the game, fleshing out the story and bringing more to the characters, making them feel more human than just video game characters, and that's something that both Neil and Craig have managed to do. They have taken an already terrifying game and turned it up to 11 with the TV show, being able to create tension, fear, and horror without making it feel cheesy, something The Walking Dead, for example, lost in its later seasons. While there's only been one episode so far, I am already happy to say that this has to be the best video game adaptation of all time. They have managed to get the feel for the game and been able to appeal to the fans by adding just the right amount of lore and Easter eggs without making it a full-blown Easter egg hunt, finding one around every corner. The music of the episode was composed by Gustavo Santaolalla, who's also composed the music for parts 1 and 2, which is incredibly haunting and relaxing at the same time. It is incredible how it happens. The use of Spanish guitar helps give it a really unique sound, which makes it stand out all the more. If you've not checked out HBO's The Last of Us yet, I cannot recommend it to you enough, and I will avidly be watching the show every Monday as I am really excited to see what they do with it. The Last of Us is HBO's second highest watched premiere, with just over 4.7 million people watching, falling short to House of Dragons, which had 9.9 million viewers. Neil Druckmann has already confirmed that Season 1 will cover the entire first game, and if they do Season 2, they'll be focusing on Part 2, and I cannot wait to see how they tackle that. If you haven't seen any footage for The Last of Us Part 1 or 2, you can find a full playthrough available on my YouTube channel in 2 playlists, which makes it nice and easy to watch, so highly recommend checking them out. I will be aiming to do an episode of the Eerie Nerd Podcast on each episode, so be sure to subscribe to the Eerie Nerd Gaming YouTube channel to be kept up to date with every episode of the Eerie Nerd Podcast that comes out. The Last of Us TV show is available on HBO in America on Sundays at 9 PM and on Sky Atlantic in the UK at 2 AM, and you can catch up on Now TV if you don't have Sky. Thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Eerie Nerd Podcast. If you would like to get in touch with the show, please email me at eerieearth@hotmail.com and be sure to subscribe to Eerie Nerd Gaming for more gaming live streams and catch up to my live streams of The Last of Us Part 1, 2 and Left Behind, the DLC for Part 1. I also have now got a Patreon where you can support Eerie Earth and the Eerie Nerd Gaming YouTube channel by subscribing to £3 a month, where you will be guaranteed a call out on every single live stream and every single upcoming episode of the Eerie Nerd Podcast and the Eerie Earth Podcast. So if that's something you're interested in doing, help me out by supporting my Patreon. Head over to Patreon and search for Eerie Earth and you will find it. Please visit www.eerieearth.com for more information. Thanks very much for listening, guys. I'll see you again. Bye-bye for now.